What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. This is the time and the place where you can come and get answers to your most pressing Amazon advertising questions. I always love this show. And by the way, if this is your first time joining in, I want to give a big welcome, and give myself a quick intro. So, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm the co-founder of an ads agency called Junglr, hence Ask Junglr, and hence why we talk about Amazon ads, because that is definitely, I don't know if Amazon ads are an inch deep. I mean, you got a lot to them, right? We do know and run a lot of obviously sponsored ads, DSP, as well as marrying those two with a lot of AMC insights. So I would say like in, inch wide, a mile deep, but honestly, Amazon advertising is expanding rapidly. And there's also a ton of integrations. So like with DSP offers, you can run, like streaming TV ads, and Amazon is opening up their sort of ad inventory to include partnerships with like Netflix, and obviously there's Prime Video. Like there's so much. It feels like that small inch is ever expanding. So this is where we can come in and give you insights based on what it is that you want to know. And I'm already seeing some questions come in the chat, which is awesome. So I want to give you a quick overview of how this segment runs. So I show up here again every single week. I would say rain or shine. Sometimes every once in a while I get sick, but generally speaking, we're here every single Thursday for roughly about an hour. Now I'm going to be hopping from this Q&A to another Q&A directly following this. So depending on how many questions we get in today, we'll kind of determine the length of the segment. But wherever you are listening in on, whatever streaming platform you are viewing, please drop your Amazon ad questions into the chat. I will pull them up and we will give you the best answers possible. I love to do screen shares on this segment as well. So a lot of times we'll talk about search pages and how things work. So expect us to pop open screen shares. If I have resources available, which there's a lot of resources available, I will pull those open as well. And we will dive into it and make sure that you can get answers to your most pressing ad questions. And this is a good question. So I told you, like I mentioned in the beginning, that Amazon advertising is constantly expanding and changing, and this is one of them. So Jada Adams, can you go into the share of voice sponsored branch new allocation feature? Yes, I will absolutely doing it. And we are in the midst of actually running some tests on this for some of our brands. Thankfully, we were to work with several like amazing brands who are really interested in taking advantage of like all of the new features as soon as they roll out. So whenever we have things that we know can help service the brands, again, based on goals, we're really bullish on that. Like sometimes for certain brands, an example would be like if you're a starting brand, this whole share of voice for sponsored brands is probably not a good option for you. However, if you have healthy budgets and if you have a lot of if you have a lot of branded search, then this could be a good option. So, let me quickly go over what this share of voice even is. Then we'll talk about the requirements to set it up. And then I really hope to soon be able to give you some insights into the performance of this as well. Again, that will take some testing and some time. And we ran into some hiccups with some inventory, which I'll touch on when we get to the setup. So, what is a share of voice for sponsored brand ads? Well, Amazon has recognized that certain brands find real estate on their branded terms to be very valuable. And historically, this has been kind of a pain in the butt because you obviously have to just bid really high, but you couldn't like reserve a certain like share of voice, or share of voice is basically like, well, what are you generating in terms of the impression? It's kind of a way to think about that. So Amazon rolled out this feature only for sponsored brand ads though. And what they said is, hey, if you designate what branded terms you want to show up on, and if you will give us a specific budget for this, then we will sort of earmark that budget and make sure that you're winning your share of voice on your branded terms, which is phenomenal, but it comes with a few caveats. So the first caveat is that there is a budget requirement on this. And I'll actually give you how those budgets are calculated and why actually, unless you have a lot of branded search, or why this may not work if you have branded terms that are also sort of generic. And I'll talk about what that means. So the budget requirement is a $6,000 budget. Now that budget will be spread over time. So it's not like that's not even like a monthly budget. You set up the campaign and that's your lifetime budget. Now, how that budget gets allocated, what is the sort of spread of that, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we're still in the testing phases. So I really we're going to have to do some analysis once we start getting the data feedback for this. Now, the other thing is that to generate the budget, so again, it's like a sponsored brand ads. You can't, in terms of where you direct the traffic, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe you can only direct it to store pages. And you do have to have at least 3 products entered into the campaign. So again, this is not going to work for a brand that doesn't have, say, more than one product. Obviously, these can be variations of each other, so that's totally fine. And then the other thing that you want to keep in mind, so you can, if you have a large catalog, you can kind of like showcase all of your products. Just do keep in mind, depending on sort of what kind of long tail branded search you have, then that will kind of change. You still want to think of it from a targeting perspective. So an example would be like, let's say you have bedding, but then you're also selling like tablecloths. I probably would want to, like, maybe I could do bedding groupings where I have like my sheets and maybe my comforters or something, but I wouldn't really want to put like the sheets with the tablecloths, right? Because those are kind of two separate things. Although if I'm thinking about just specific branded terms, like my main like branded term, then maybe I could just, I could showcase my entire catalog. And herein lies sort of the interesting thing and why it actually requires you to have a lot of branded search to even run these campaigns. So the way you set it up, and honestly, you can go click in and like mess around with this and even see if it's a possibility for you before you launch it. It's like any other campaign where you like, when you go to set it up and then you just click back and you don't actually launch it. I would recommend just exploring this. So the way that it works is you enter in the products that you want to go after, and Amazon will suggest branded terms for you. So you can just select all of these, and I would kind of recommend that, or just taking a look at it. But what we found, so for like one of our brands who we were going through the setup phase with, there were some terms, like you'll notice that there's long tail searches in there. And so it was brand name, and it had a long tail tag on keyword of like one type of item for the brand. And then there was a tag on keyword for another type of brand, or keyword for the, product. So it was like brand, product type. And if you think about it from a consumer perspective, if somebody's typing in brand, product type, and then you show up an ad with different products, so maybe we only want to showcase like one product type, or if you wanted to go through and it was kind of like that. Okay. So I probably will want to segment those, but herein lies the problem is, unless you have just like insane amounts of brand search, you won't really be able to do super granular segmentation. And here is why. Because to get to the amount of budget that's needed, remember, we got to hit a 6K budget. So you have to implement, you input your keywords. And then what you do is you scroll down and it says like calculate budget or something like that. And what it does is it looks at the amount of, impressions, or like the share of voice that each of those individual keywords have. And then that will calculate your budget. And you can't run the ad or the campaign unless unless you hit the amount of budget that's needed, which means you're going to have to input more keywords. Now, Amazon's not going to suggest all of the keywords. What we did initially is we just like inputted all the keywords, and then we just like ran it and realized that we didn't have enough budget. Now, we weren't that far off. We were just like a couple $100s short. And so what we ended up doing is we just went and found additional keywords in our search term reports. And so we had one hiccup because one of the products we wanted to run was a bestseller. It's out of stock. So we're waiting for that to go back in stock, and then we're running the test. I say that to say there is some other information when you go to set up the campaign that says you can try and input a keyword and reserve the share of voice for that keyword, but Amazon may or may not allow you to input that. So let me think of an example. Okay, let's think of a wild example. Like, say you had a brand that did, you say you're doing silverware or something, right? And let's say my brand name, I'm sure this is not an applicable brand name. Let's just say for like argument's sake that our brand name is Silver Spoon. That's our brand name. I can't reserve share of voice on Silver Spoon, because if you think about it, there are shoppers typing in the keyword silver spoon, and they're not necessarily only looking for my brand. So depending on your brand name, here it actually is helpful if you have a brand name that is not also associated as a generic keyword. So for this particular brand, we can't actually only target the specific brand name. The other interesting thing is, and I guess this is to be expected, but it's in sponsored brands. The only keyword type you can put in is an exact match because you're only reserving on the exact match keyword. I am very interested to see. I'm assuming it's only going to be those terms because those are the ones that we are reserving. But I also do happen to know that Amazon has changed their the way that exact match functions inside of sponsor brand ads to also include what's called like related searches. So an example that they give is like, say you are going after running shoes, it can also trigger sneakers. And in my experience, those related keywords don't always perform great. However, I would expect them, if they're doing this, to use the traditional exact match targeting, where it only targets that specific search. That being said, remains to be seen. I will keep you guys posted when it comes to that. So, just a quick recap. I would, if you're interested in this, I would just go in and test setting up a campaign. In worst case scenario is you find out information and you don't necessarily have to run it. So that was a great question, though. Again, a lot of new features coming out. Feel free to ask follow-up questions, or if I see anything interesting or there's a new feature you're wondering about, feel free to drop it in. Again, for those of you who are joining in, the format of this is you drop in your Amazon advertising question into whatever chat you are listening in on the stream, and then I will pull it up and I will give you an answer. And if you do have a question, I actually highly recommend you drop it in sooner rather than later, because in my experience, the questions tend to come fast and furious towards the end. And so if you want to get your question answered, I recommend putting this in sooner. All right, question from Jason. When a competitor is bidding really aggressively, both on their branded terms and shared niche keywords, do you think it's worth trying to pressure them to spend more clicks, or does that actually backfire? I'm going to reread that question and make sure I understand it. When a competitor is bidding really aggressively on both their branded terms and their shared niche keywords, do you think it's worth trying to pressure them to spend more click, or does that usually backfire? I'm assuming when you say pressuring them, you mean trying to bid against those keywords as well. Let me know if that's what you meant. I'm going to assume that is what you meant, but please, by the way, context is great. So if you want to drop a follow-up question, you can feel free to do so. In this case, I would say, competitor conquesting can be really good and it can be very effective, and it can also be very expensive and unprofitable. So I would say pick your battles. If we can ever get good performance, meaning high conversion rates, potentially also, on the lower end of ACoS as well, although typically, again, you will typically see higher ACoS when you are going after some of your competitors' keywords. The reason being is because really the two functions of ACoS being high or low are, what is the cost per click that I'm paying to get on this keyword? And two, what is my conversion rate? And typically speaking, when someone is searching for somebody else's brand name, my conversion rates are typically low because they might be interested, but they're already searching intentionally for that other brand. And then oftentimes, not always, but sometimes my CPCs may be high based on two things. One, how aggressively they're bidding for their branded terms, but then two, how well the algorithm associates my product with that particular search and like search shopper search behavior. Because if Amazon's algorithm or ad algorithm specifically does not determine your quote relevant for a keyword, that will affect what kind of CPCs you see in the ad auction. So for those two reasons, typically speaking, it can be more expensive. Now, is it worth it to go after conquesting? I would say Yes, if you can answer yes to these two questions. The first one is, what is the overall performance of the account? Or if you are looking at it on a more granular level, excuse me, what is the performance of that specific product? I.e., what is the A cost? What is the total A cost? What is the profitability of that product? If you're dealing with a product that is less profitable, the total A cost is very high, you're really in sort of a must control ad spend mode, then typically speaking, going after conquesting is probably not where your money is best spent. And I would prefer to spend my more aggressive allocated ad dollars on more market share plays, i.e., like ranking strategies. Now, if you have really good performance and you're looking at what else can I push into the market on, then I would say I would want to answer yes to the next question, which is, what is my performance when I go after that particular keyword? If I can afford to go after it, especially if my performance is great, heck yes, I'm going to be targeting the crap out of the competitor all day long. And here, actually, product targeting can be really beneficial, both sponsored product targeting as well as sponsored display ASIN targeting, we have found. And so I would say, is it worth doing? Yes. Is it worth doing at a loss? In my personal opinion, no. Unless the overall performance, make like an example would be like, let's say your target total A cost is 10% and you're running the target total A cost is like 8% right now, and the budgets are healthy. In that case, yes, what else can I do? What else can I drive into the market? Because I'm just very profitable at that point. But if I have an account where my goal is 10% and I'm already running at like 13% total A cost, then I would be very careful with my strategies that I know from experience just don't tend to give me the biggest bang for my buck. And so that's how I would approach it. Hopefully that was helpful. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, okay, so yes, that was Jason's question, to pressure the second place ad auction system. Yeah, so you can do that, but I would look at, how is this affecting my brand? How is this affecting my profitability? And I don't necessarily want to completely destroy my own profitability to attempt to hurt a competitor. If I can afford to do it, if I can pull off some of their um some of their like loyal customers, then I'm going to do that all day long, regardless if I'm trying to hurt them or not, because it's benefiting my brand. How do you track and optimize lifetime value of a customer through ads? This is a fantastic question. So really what you want to do, so we're using AMC to track customer acquisition costs, and we're looking at lifetime value of the customer. That being said, I'm trying to remember if there's a really strong way to pull LTV from AMC. And in my remembering, I'm going to have to go back to my developer and ask, because he's the one who went down the rabbit hole with the reports. I do believe we found the best way to calculate customer cohorts was using the customer data and customer IDs. That's what we found typically works best. Now, you can look at things like repeat purchase behavior in AMC. And you can look at customer acquisition costs, because you can get new to brand customers versus existing customers through AMC. So how do you track it? I would say you would want to use a combined data set of AMC as well as looking at the customer. I don't even remember the port. It's inside not inside ad console. It's inside the account somewhere. But you would want to look at those two blended things to be like, how good is repeat purchase? And fun fact, because there's segmentation and differences in the way it's calculated inside of, you can technically go to brand analytics and there's like I don't remember if it's like customer loyalty or like repeat purchase behavior or something like that. We have found that the reporting inside of AMC is more accurate. Not more accurate, but it's calculated in my experience to be more like how business reports and ad console calculates those numbers. We found like when blending data sets, it's better to use AMC versus that reporting. And so I mean I would definitely dig into AMC here. And then the other question is, how do you improve it? And so how you would improve it is by doing two things. So by using AMC audiences in your sponsored ads, or if you're running DSP, then of course audiences are necessary in that as well. And then the other thing that we have found is, if you can, getting and mirroring these reports, you basically need to know SQL and how to write queries. But if you can do that, then you can get reports that help you identify which specific campaigns and which products you get better new to brand on. And then you can do two things. You can leverage AMC audiences in your campaigns to try and, bolster what that campaign is going to go after in terms of the audiences. But then you can also use that as sort of like an overlay of analytics to say, okay, if I know I need to focus in on new to brand customers, meaning customers who have never purchased from my brand before, then these are the campaigns that I find get me like more new to brand customers, so I can double down on these particular campaigns. So it's basically adding another layer into optimization. It's a lot more data analysis. I would say if your ads, like I just went down the rabbit hole on two, I would consider more like high level strategies and tactics. So the one was like share of voice stuff. The other one is looking at like customer LTV. Both beneficial, both insanely data analytics heavy. And if you hyper focus on either of those things and ignore the overall performance of the account, you can actually, it's like focusing on the things that matter and driving the needle, right? So if I had an account that ACoS was out of control, spend is out of control, I don't even have a good keyword ranking structure. I'm not actively going back through my search term reports and analyzing it. And oh yeah, by the way, total ACoS is really affecting profitability. I need to drive that down. I would focus on those things. That being said, if you have an account that is running really well, that you're like, I've been kind of status quo for a while. I know I need to launch new products, and there's that part of growth, but then there's how do I get more juice out of my existing products, because things are just, again, things are going well. What more can I do? That's where adding on these additional analysis and really diving in and laser, like going in there with a scalpel to your ad strategy, we have been finding to be very beneficial. But unless, again, you have a really good setup, I don't think I would, let's just say that I wouldn't worry about it. And the impact you're going to have is going to be so incremental that it's not going to make up for an account that just has a ton of wasted ad spend, if that makes sense. When setting up AMC attribution tags, these inputs platform, set up a different platform. Or can I use the attribution links on Facebook that was set on a different platform? I do believe if you want to track it through and have it give relations from, like, for Amazon on their end to also fire off purchases, from my understanding, you would want to set up the attribution links inside of Amazon. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you were getting value. Yes, for those of you who are just joining in, I would just say, If you want to get answers to your Amazon ad questions, drop them in the chat. I will pull them up and try and give you answers to your most pressing questions. Awesome. So we're about 30 minutes in. We will see how long. I've been struggling with a sore throat all week. So something's going around my family. We'll see how long I can hold out. Because again, I'm going to be jumping right to another 1 hour Q&A right after this. So that will be a lot of fun. I should probably look up the link for you guys in case anyone wants to join that as well, because there will be other people on that live as well. Following up a share of voice after producing other CPCs lower in comparison to sponsor brand CPCs, other branded CPCs. Yes. So it's not actually a CPC. Actually, let me see if I can pull up an ad account and I will actually go through it. So it's really interesting. It's not the way it's Amazon is leaning into this more with like specific audiences and like audience targeting and VCPM or CPM, which is like paying for impressions. So that's really what you're paying for. When they say share of voice, the voice is like the amount of basically the impressions or the traffic happening on that one. And so it's not, yeah, it's not a sorry, I'm trying to like log in and speak at the same time. The way it is again, you input the targets that you want to go after, and then you click what is the budget needed to go after these targets, and then that is how your budget is calculated, which is completely different. So in setting up a regular campaign with like a regular cost per click, what you would do is, of course, you input your keywords and you say, hey, Amazon, I am willing to spend up to X. Again, here is my bid. I'm willing to spend up to $1, whatever the case may be, then I'm putting that in there. So this is, I'm looking at the reserve share of voice right now. So you reserve your top of search visibility for keywords related to your brand. So they're quoting their success metric as top of search impression share. So they're giving you a fixed price and they're saying this is how much it's going to cost for you to get top of search impression share. And what you'll do is you'll select your brand, and then you enter in your list, and then you click into now it does give you a warning. It says some of these keywords are not going to be eligible for targeting and will not show up. And the reason why they're not going to be eligible for targeting, it says to protect the shopper experience, there are some restrictions on keywords and products you can target in your advertising. I'm trying to read this now. So it's your campaigns must be relevant to your products being promoted. Ads must not target keywords or product that could result in offensive yada yada yada. So again, it's saying that you can't necessarily reserve targets. Again, if I have the keyword silver spoon, that's my branded term, then I'm not going to be able, because that silver spoon is associated with something else. And so in this case, you have to give it to a storefront or a landing page. Now, this does include sub pages, and I would recommend a curated sub page for this. You cannot run it to a specific detail page. That's not available, at least currently. I don't think they'll change that. Not available with the reserved share of voice outcome. So all you're doing, again, all you can do is simply input the keywords that you want to go after. So you're reserving the top of search, so the banners or whatever. Now you are able to use a video if you want. So you can either do a product collection, you can do a store spotlight, or you can do a video. And again, that video will show top of search. And what they do is for the keyword targeting, you just select all of your keywords that you want to implement in there, and then you run, and then of course you submit for review and you see what your review is. So that's kind of the way that it gets set up. All right, you're saying, oh, awesome. Appreciate the vote of support. All right. As what is a good percent of ad budget to spend on DSP, consumables, brand? Same thing for percentage of ad budget on branded versus non-branded. That is a fantastic question. I would say the fact that you are consumables means that there is a lot of really amazing things that you can do in terms of DSP. So there's a couple ways that you can go through and you can like calculate a budget. So the one is just going to be like a simple percentage, meaning maybe you start out with 10% of your current budget, maybe going up to 20%, somewhere between 10 and 20% of the current budget. There's another way that you can build out budgets, which is something that we do. Now, it does require you to have an understanding of DSP, and it's not a simple like, oh, we want to advertise on these many products and yada, yada, yada. So the one way that we actually go through and we build budgets out for clients or anyone who's interested in DSP is we will actually take a look at what products we want to run the budgets for. Then we will go through and we will do, so I mean, it requires a lot more work up front, but to be honest, it gives you much better ideas of what your budget should be. There is something in Amazon, it's called like an ads planner, which allows you to figure out segmented audiences and then identify, you know, again, with the current VCPMs, like what kind of budgets are needed to capture a specific amount of that audience. And so what we'll actually do is we'll do deep dive keyword research, or not deep dive, not keyword research. So we'll do deep dive product, competitor, and audience research, and then we'll actually build out the ads plan, and then Google Ads Planner, gosh. Amazon's ad planner will tell us the necessary budgets needed to run that. And that, in my personal opinion, is a better way of doing that because if you just do a percentage of the total budget, like let's say your budget is like on the smaller end, like let's say we had a $30,000, you know, 20, or let's just do lower, like $20,000 a month that we're spending on sponsored ads. And we say, okay, 10%, that's like $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month probably won't get you as far. Although, you know, that 10% budget, let's say if you have a brand that's spending, you know, 200,000, we say, okay, 10%, now we're spending 20K. We might actually overshoot what we need for testing budget, depending on how many products I have. So I'm a fan, and this is like, again, all thanks to our DSP lead, who she's amazing, but, that's how our preference in building out budgets, which means like in terms of percentage wise, again, typically speaking, if you're firing on all cylinders, you might end up with budgets that are roughly 15 to 20% of total sponsored ad budgets. But again, we're a huge fan of running, again, doing the deep dive, targeting, identifying audiences, testing those audiences, and then adjusting the DSP budgets based on our flagging of new opportunities in DSP that we don't have the ability to capture because of the current budget limitations. So that's kind of how we go about adjusting that. And in terms of your percent of ad budget for branded versus non-branded, I'm trying to think, because if you don't have a lot of branded search, then you're probably running this really low. Your branded versus non-branded will probably naturally be really low. Where this gets into big issues is when you work with more nationally recognized brands, and we do have quite a few of those brands. If I said the names, you would 100% know who I'm talking about. But in our experience, those ones, it is so easy for budgets branded budgets to get scaled. And in fact, we just onboarded a brand that has been really struggling to grow sales. And the reason why is that over 50% of their budget is being spent on branded. The problem that you'll find here is that the difference between branded and non-branded conversions, especially when you're talking brands that have a more premium price point, which is very typical when you have like an off Amazon, like non-native Amazon or non-native Amazon brand who has like, I mean, they have to deal with map pricing. They can't do significant discounts because that's going to hurt their retailers and wholesalers. Like there's so many more complexities that get into that, which typically means a lot of times they have to come in at higher price points. And there are all several of those brands who just don't do any like discounting around tentpole days because of sort of the hurting of, you know, kind of the brand in general. That seems very weird to a lot of people who are native to the Amazon platform, but there's a specific reason why like more enterprise deals with that. That being said, a lot of times these brands need really good, or then maybe they're demanding like really low total day costs or much higher ROAS numbers. And so here, in my experience, typically speaking, for a lot of these, like maybe a little bit higher price point, more premium brands with a whole lot of like national brand recognition, most times the ad conversion rate on branded versus non-branded, branded tends to be about double the conversion rate, which means about double the ROAS or half the regular ACoS, just due to the conversion rate factors. And so a lot of times, because either there's not good segmentation of that, or because whoever's running the ads just needs to put up good numbers, there tends to be a shift in focus on strategically on branded terms. So it's really easy. Like I've seen some accounts where 60 to 70% of the budget is on branded. Now, as long as the brand is aware of that and is known with that and they're okay with that, I wouldn't have a problem with that per se, but that's not, I would say that's only for brands who view Amazon as like a profitable retail channel and not like a market share growth channel. But if they're directly looking at Amazon as a way to grow sales in general and they're looking to capture market share, then you will actually hurt that market share capture and you're not focusing on new to brand. So in those cases, in my experience, I want to say you will have to sort of fight the performance metrics a little bit on a campaign level or a targeting level, and you will have to actively make sure you're segmenting, also make sure you're segmenting at a search term level. So there's a lot of work and effort that goes into it that in some ways also kind of hurts performance metrics. Again, if they're only looking at ACoS, where you probably want to keep it around 15 to 20% has been, I think that's been about where we found that kind of sweet spot to be. But again, as long as you're having a really frank discussion with the brand on what's going on, then I would doing that. I recently upgrading the H1 Diamond that allows pausing campaigns during early morning hours. While doing so, hamper impressions for the rest of the day, or the rest of the day is not impacted negatively. No, you'll just impact impressions for that specific time of the day. My recommendation though is to go in and make sure you're running an analysis to determine that it does in fact make sense to pause the campaigns during that time period. There's a lot of times, so day parting has been around for a very long time. It's been a talk in the space for a very long time. There have been tools that allow you to do day parting for a very long time. But up until Amazon released these something marketing stream, I believe is what they called, which is the hourly data, there wasn't really a good way to identify if in fact conversion rates, etc., were higher or lower on a specific time frame. So I would recommend, now I don't recall if Helium 10 pulls reports for you. If they do, then in that case, that's fine. What I would recommend doing if you don't have access to like a tool that's going to give you some insights, I would go and pull a sponsored product campaign report So you can only pull this for sponsored product ads, I believe. Actually, I should check and see if they rolled out any new reporting. But you want to pull a sponsored product campaign report, and there you can pull hourly data. So my recommendation, you would want to go and look at that data, and then you would want to run that report. So that report, it's going to give you hourly for like every single day. So you're going to want to, ideally you could pull 30 days, but it depends on how many campaigns are in the account. Yeah, so sponsored product campaign, you can select hourly. So you want to do that. Maybe last 14 days, last 30 days might be a little bit much. And so for that, you're going to want, I'm looking to see if Sponsor Brands. Okay, so Sponsor Brands has a campaign report, but you're not able to do that on an hourly basis. And then let's see, Sponsor Display Ads does have a campaign report, but you cannot do it on an hourly basis. You can do it on a daily basis, but you really need hourly for that. And so in that case, I would want to look at an aggregate across all of the days that are all the hours. Is there specific hours where the campaign performs better or worse? And I would want to do this on a campaign level. Unfortunately, what you're going to do is you're going to run into a low data problem here, because let's say I only get one click towards the beginning of the day and that one click does not convert. So my conversion rate's 0. Does that necessarily mean that that's a bad time of the day to run ads? No. And so I would also, but I would just want to run that analysis. You can look at, I would want to, if at all possible, like if you don't have the data enough on a campaign level, I would want to, hopefully you're using good campaign naming structures so you can filter out for the campaigns for a specific product. And then you can run that analysis in there. And then I would also want to run the analysis by days of the week. So is there specific days of the week that we convert better or worse? And you just want to look at that decision tree and then understand, okay, one, do I even have enough data to do this? If you don't have enough data to say that it's better or worse on a specific day, I wouldn't add in day parting. Budget adjustments, keyword bid adjustments, adding negative keywords, adjusting your placements, etc. All those optimizations will get you way more impactful results than just leaning in on day parting. Day parting alone, unless there's so much data that you're like, oh my gosh, it is so obvious to me that I'm absolutely wasting money at 2 a.m., right? But unless you have a very clear amount of information to say, yes, this is something that I need to take care of and we're bleeding money here, which to be honest, I think in most, if not every account I've analyzed, it's like, well, I can kind of think this may make sense, but also I don't really have enough data to like justifiably say definitively yes or no. Day parting is not going to fix a poor performing account. Let me put it that way. Your other optimization tactics are going to be way more impactful there. I would double down and focus on that. But again, if you have good data to allow you to say that, yes, this works or this does not work, then I would do that. If was all your question about the attribution links, to be honest, that is not something that I have area of expertise in. So I'm not 100% sure on that. But another question, spending medium ticket, so $100 per piece apparel brand, so higher ticket apparel. Sales is good, but profits not so good. Is it an idea to start a premium product line over Amazon for better profits, or is Amazon not for it? It honestly really depends on the conversion rate of the products. So an example would be, let's say I have $100 product. Actually, let me just, for fun, let's just do math. Math is fun. Let's say I have a product. Let me share my screen. Let's do math. Math is fun. Okay, so let's say product price. let's say my product price is $100, and then let's say I have another product that is $25. And so the problem with the $25 product is, like, let's say even on both of these products, let's say on the $100 product, I have 40% margins, and on this product, I'm squeaking in at 30% margins, which means that, let's see, times, yes. I make $40 on this product when I sell one, and I make $7.50 on this one. So that's kind of the issue that you're ending up with. Now, let's say that my CPCs on these products, and let's say my conversion rates. So here's where you can start to run into some problems. Actually, let's, for argument's sake, let's just do 40 on both of these, but then you can see how the difference is when it comes to this. So this are our profits before ads. Then your problem, let's say in both of these, we have a $1 CPC. So you end up with, say pretty even Steven across the board. Now your conversion rate on these, and let me zoom in here. Now your conversion rate is going to vary wildly. So on a $25 product, let's say your conversion rate, now this is clothing is going to be lower, but let's say you can get like a 10% conversion rate, which honestly would be kind of high for clothing, on this one. So a 10% conversion rate, let's see. So we would do, it's 1 divided by 10%, which takes us 10 clicks on average to convert to a sale. And if we're multiplying that times the CPC, then this gives us $10. So this is probably the scenario that you're ending up with, where the profits after ads just aren't ending up to be in a good spot. Now, if you can, say, get this conversion rate up, so that one goes down, then suddenly you're making a little bit of profit. But the other thing you need to keep in mind is the, what would you call it? I would call it sales velocity. Sales velocity is another thing to take into account. Let's see. I'm going to say this is ad spend, and this is profit after ads. So let's say our sales velocity on the lower price product means you can sell 20 pieces a day. That means 20 multiplied by 3, we're looking at a $66 profit overall. Now, obviously, if this was 0, doesn't matter how many sell, we're still not making profits. Even if we could do, say, like 12% conversion rates or something, at least we're still making some profits. So here's where it starts to differentiate a little bit. So on the conversion rates, let's say on your higher price items, I'll be honest with you, a 2% conversion rate is going to be, that's going to be generous. Most times on over $100 products, I'm seeing 1.5 to 1% conversion rates. I'll give you 2. That means our ad spend, because we have a 2% conversion rate, is $50, which is actually more than our, and this is where most people run into problems, because they go, oh, it's a higher price. I have better margins. I have, now maybe we have a 50% margin on the higher price item. And so, but still, see, even after that, now if I had 5% conversion rates, well, okay, so maybe I'm making more. But honestly, if I think my product's going to convert, but if I go down to 1%, all of a sudden I'm losing money on this. And then you're looking at sales velocity. So let's say, okay, maybe we can get up to a 3% conversion rate. Okay, so we're making more profits after ads. But what happens when our sales velocity is we're selling like 5 a day because it's really hard to convert on these? Then okay, maybe I'm making more money. But this is a scenario that I would look at. It really comes down to, what is the conversion rate at the higher price point? What is my profit margins? Like, am I doing much better margins? Or is it just that I have the same margins, but the profits after ads are higher? Because again, you're going to have to make up with a higher conversion rate, because I can guarantee you your conversion rate at a double the price product is not ever going to be the same at the low price product. It's just not. People have a longer consideration window. And then you want to look at, okay, even if I can squeak out more profits, what is my sales velocity? And then that's going to equal out. So maybe you run this math and you determine, hey, yeah, I think I can squeeze out more. Again, this is looking at profits and sales velocity. So I think I can squeeze out more profit dollars. Profit, can't spell. Profit dollars. Maybe I can squeeze out more profit dollars by the end of the day, but maybe I can't. And so that's actually the other thing that you want to look at, because a lot of times people think like, oh, what if I lowered my price, right? Let's actually do this. Like maybe I lower my price. So I have to lower my price to $22. And so I'm not making more profit. But what happens when all of a sudden my sales go up? I have way higher velocity on things. So you just want to, like play around with the scenarios, looking at conversion rates, looking at sales velocity. How do these two things affect each other? What is my margins before ads, et cetera, and then run that math to figure out, again, is it going to be better or not? So the answer is maybe. Run the math would be my answer to that. And with that, I think we are about 5 minutes out. However, again, I do have another one that I do need to jump to, which I should see if I can give you all the link to that. If somebody wants to continue the conversation with myself and a couple other super awesome people who are really good experts in the Amazon PPC space, I will find and drop. Let me share this tab. So yep, I'm jumping to another Amazon PPC masterclass. So if anybody would like to, you have to save a seat. But if anyone wants to hop over into that one, I will drop the link into the chat. Feel free to show up there. With that, you guys have been amazing. I love it. This is, again, my favorite time of the week. Hopefully you guys got some awesome answers to your questions. And with that, I will check you guys in the very next live, same time, same place next week. Thanks so much. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.